He thought his dog was warning him about danger in the woods, but what they found frozen above the trees was worth $245 million, and someone else was already coming for it. That night, the storm didn't just bring snow, it brought something else. Something that made a trained veteran reach for his rifle and follow a dog that refused to back down. Deep in the Idaho wilderness, where no one should have been, they found a treehouse sealed in ice for decades, and inside it, a secret that could change everything. Before we go further, drop a quick comment and tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. The wind hit the cabin like a slow, steady hammer, pressing against the walls, slipping through the cracks, searching for a way inside. Ethan Cole didn't move. He sat in the dark, elbows resting on his knees, staring at nothing in particular. The fire in the cast-iron stove had burned low, leaving only a dull red glow that pulsed like a fading heartbeat. The smell of wood smoke hung thick in the air, mixed with cold metal and old leather. Outside, the storm had settled in. Not loud, not violent, just constant. The kind that didn't need to shout. A loose shutter tapped somewhere along the side of the cabin. Tap. Pause. Tap. The rhythm was off just enough to keep the mind from settling. Ethan's head tilted slightly. He listened, counted the intervals, tracked the sound against the wind. Not random, but not a threat either. He let it go. Across the room, Shadow stood by the door. The German Shepherd hadn't moved in several minutes, maybe longer. His body was rigid, weight forward, ears locked high, yet his gaze was fixed on the narrow strip of darkness visible through the frosted window. He wasn't barking. That was the first thing Ethan noticed. Shadow always barked when something was wrong. A coyote. A stranger. Even the occasional drifting branch scraping across the porch. But not this time. This time, the dog made a low sound deep in his throat. Not a growl, not a whine. Something in between. Something that didn't belong. Ethan exhaled slowly and reached for the coffee mug sitting on the table beside him. It had gone cold an hour ago, maybe more. He didn't drink it, just held it, letting the ceramic pull the heat from his hand. The sound came again, from Shadow. Low, controlled, focused. Ethan looked up. "Hey." The word barely left his mouth. Shadow didn't react, didn't turn his head, didn't flick an ear. Nothing, just stared. Ethan set the mug down. Something tightened in his chest. Not fear, not yet. Just awareness. The kind that crept in quietly, like a shadow shifting where it shouldn't. He pushed himself to his feet. The floorboards creaked under his weight, a familiar sound. He moved without rushing, each step measured, balanced. His body remembered how to move like this even when his mind didn't want to. He stopped a few feet behind the dog, waited, listened. The wind dragged across the tree line, carrying the distant groan of branches bending under ice. Snow whispered against the cabin walls. Somewhere far off, something cracked, wood under pressure, giving way. Ethan's eyes shifted to the window. He adjusted his stance slightly, angling his body so he could see both the reflection inside and the darkness outside. Habit. Old habit. The kind that didn't fade. Nothing moved. No shapes. No shadows breaking from the tree line. No sign of life beyond the storm. He leaned closer. Still nothing. Behind him, the stove popped sharply. The sound snapped through the room like a gunshot. Ethan's body reacted before his mind caught up. His shoulders dropped, weight shifting, hand already halfway to the knife resting on the table. For a split second, heat, dust, rotor blades tearing the sky apart. A voice yelling over comms, "Contact left!" The image hit hard and vanished just as fast. Ethan blinked. The cabin came back. The stove, the wind, shadow, always shadow. The dog hadn't flinched. Not at the noise, not at anything. Still staring, still locked. Ethan's breathing slowed, controlled, pulled back into rhythm. As he stepped closer to the door, Shadow's tail gave a single, slow movement. Not a wag, just acknowledgement. Ethan crouched beside him. "What is it?" The words came out quieter this time. Closer, like he didn't want to disturb whatever the dog was tracking. Shadow's ears twitched once, then froze again. Ethan followed the dog's line of sight. The forest beyond the cabin was a wall of shifting white and black. Snow blurred the outlines, turning the trees into tall, skeletal shapes that swayed just enough to feel alive. He scanned left, paused, then right, tracked the gaps between trunks, looked for contrast, movement, anything out of place. Nothing. No heat source. No silhouette. No broken pattern in the snow. Just storm. But Shadow didn't move, didn't doubt. Ethan felt it then, that quiet pull, the same one he used to feel right before something went wrong. Not loud, not urgent, just there. He reached out slowly and rested a hand against Shadow's neck. The fur was cold near the surface, but warm underneath. The dog's muscles were tight, coiled, ready. For what? Ethan muttered under his breath. The dog made that sound again, lower this time. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stood up, walked to the rack near the wall. The rifle was already clean, already loaded. It always was. He checked it anyway. Slide. Click. Smooth. His fingers moved without hesitation, without thought. The motions were automatic, familiar, reliable in a way nothing else had been for a long time. Behind him, Shadow shifted, not away from the door, closer to it. Ethan grabbed his coat, shrugged it on, pulled the zipper halfway before stopping. The cold inside the cabin bit into his skin immediately, sharp and dry. He didn't finish zipping it, didn't bother. He stepped back toward the door. Shadow was already there, waiting. Ethan placed his hand on the latch, paused, listened one last time. The wind, the trees, the empty. No voices, no footsteps, no reason. He exhaled slowly, then lifted the bar. The door creaked as it opened, the sound swallowed instantly by the storm outside. Snow rushed in, carried by the wind, biting at his face, his hands, his eyes. Shadow stepped out first, didn't hesitate, didn't look back. Ethan followed. The cold hit him hard, like stepping into another world. The cabin disappeared behind him in seconds, swallowed by the white. Shadow moved forward into the storm. Not wandering, not searching, leading. Ethan adjusted his grip on the rifle, eyes narrowing against the wind. "All right," he said quietly, more to himself than anything else. Then he stepped after the dog, into the white. The cold didn't creep in. It hit. Sharp. Immediate. Like stepping into a place that didn't want him there, snow drove sideways across his face, stinging the skin under his eyes, packing into the folds of his jacket. The wind cut low through the trees, dragging a hollow sound behind it, something that settled deep in the chest and stayed there. Shadow didn't slow. The dog moved ahead, a dark shape against the shifting white, weaving between trees with a purpose that didn't match the storm. His paws sank and lifted, steady, deliberate. Ethan followed. He kept his head low, shoulders angled into the wind. Every step was placed, not taken. Heel first, weight tested, then committed. The ground wasn't level here. It never was. Under the fresh snow, the land dipped and rolled in ways that could break an ankle if you trusted it too much. He didn't trust anything. Not the ground, not the storm, not even the direction. He adjusted his path slightly, keeping the wind cutting across his left shoulder. It gave him a reference point. Something fixed in a world that kept shifting. Shadow glanced back once. Just once. Eyes catching Ethan's for half a second. Then forward again. "Keep up." Ethan didn't speak. Didn't need to. The forest swallowed sound anyway. They moved deeper. The trees thickened, branches heavy with ice, bending low enough that Ethan had to duck beneath them. Snow fell in soft cascades whenever the wind shifted, sliding off the limbs and down the back of his neck. Cold water found its way through the collar of his jacket. He ignored it. A branch snapped somewhere off to the right. Ethan stopped. Not fully. Just enough. Weight shifted. Rifle angled slightly. Eyes tracking the sound. Nothing followed. No second break. No pattern. Just the storm adjusting its grip on the woods. He moved again. Shadow didn't pause. Didn't even look. That bothered him more than the sound. The dog would have reacted to anything real, anything alive. But this, whatever this was, it wasn't pulling Shadow's attention. That meant one thing. It wasn't the reason they were out here. Ethan exhaled slowly through his nose. His breath fogged the air in front of him, then vanished. He kept moving. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time stretched in the storm, lost its edges. There was no sky, no horizon, nothing to measure against, except the rhythm of his own steps and the shape of shadow ahead of him. His hands had gone numb. He flexed his fingers once, twice, tightening his grip on the rifle just enough to keep feeling in them. The wind shifted again. For a second, a flash. Bright, white, too bright. His body reacted before the thought formed. He dropped low, instinct snapping into place, eyes searching for cover, for direction, for nothing. No explosion, no shockwave, just snow catching light in the wrong way. Ethan blinked hard. The forest came back, the trees, the wind, shadow. His breathing had changed. Shorter, faster. He forced it down, in through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, controlled. And he stayed where he was for a moment longer, one knee pressed into the snow, the cold seeping through the fabric of his pants. The position felt familiar. Too familiar. He shifted his weight and stood. Didn't look back. There was nothing back there for him. There hadn't been for a long time. Shadow had stopped. Ethan froze. The dog stood ahead, just beyond a cluster of trees, body angled slightly, head lowered. Not relaxed. Not tense either. Focused. Ethan moved forward carefully, closing the distance. Each step placed inside the last, minimizing noise, minimizing movement. Old habits, hard to break, harder to forget. When he reached the trees, he saw it. The ground dropped off. Not a cliff, but close. A slope, steep and uneven, hidden beneath the fresh snow. The kind that looked solid until it wasn't. While Shadow stood at the edge, looking down. Ethan stepped beside him. Careful. He leaned forward slightly, scanning the slope. The snow had drifted deep here, filling the natural contours of the land. What looked like a smooth descent could hide rocks, fallen branches, gaps that would swallow a leg without warning. He crouched, pressed his hand into the snow, tested the density. Loose. Too loose. He glanced at Shadow. The dog shifted his weight, then stepped down. Slow. Measured. Pause, finding grip where there shouldn't have been any. Ethan watched the path, tracked the placement, memorized it, then followed. The first step held. The second slipped. His boot lost traction, sliding half a foot before catching on something beneath the surface. His body dropped instinctively, lowering his center of gravity. Went one hand shooting out to stabilize. Snow collapsed under his weight. Cold surged up his sleeve. He didn't curse, didn't react, just adjusted, shifted weight, moved again. Shadow reached the bottom first, turned, waited. Ethan followed the same path, slower now, more deliberate. Every step was a negotiation with the ground. Every movement controlled, intentional. Halfway down, his foot slipped again, this time harder. The ground gave way beneath him, snow breaking loose in a soft rush as his leg dropped deeper than expected. His knee twisted, pain flaring sharp and immediate. His body dropped with it. The world tilted. For a second, the slope wasn't a slope. It was something else. Dust. Heat. A hillside in a place far from snow. Voices shouting. Gunfire snapping through the air. "Move! Move!" Ethan's hand hit the ground hard. The impact snapped him back. Cold. White. Snow. He gritted his teeth, forced his legs straight, tested the weight. It held. Barely. He stayed there for a second longer, one hand buried in the snow, head down, breath steadying. Shadow was already moving, back up the slope. Fast. Ethan looked up just as the dog reached him. Shadow grabbed a fistful of his jacket sleeve in his teeth and pulled. Not hard. Just enough. A reminder. Up. Ethan pushed himself upright, adjusted his footing, and followed. The rest of the descent passed without incident. At the bottom, the forest changed. The trees grew wider apart here, older, their trunks thicker, their branches higher, leaving more open space between them. The wind moved differently, too, less direct, swirling instead of cutting straight through. Ethan straightened slightly, scanning the area. Visibility improved by a fraction. Enough to see shapes, enough to see movement. Or the lack of it. Shadow didn't hesitate. He moved forward again. Faster now. Ethan followed, his steps lengthening to keep pace. Something had shifted. Not in the storm, in the dog. The hesitation from before was gone, replaced with certainty. They weren't searching anymore. They were close. Ethan felt it, didn't know how, didn't question it either. The ground leveled out, the trees thinned further, and then Shadow stopped. Abrupt. Ethan nearly walked into him. He caught himself at the last second, boots sliding slightly in the snow as he halted. "What is it?" The words died before they finished. Ethan's eyes lifted, and for a moment, the storm disappeared. Not literally, but it didn't matter anymore. Because something stood ahead of them. Something that didn't belong. Dark. Massive. Rising out of the forest, like a shape pulled from another world. Ethan didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Shadow took one slow step forward, and the wind shifted just enough to reveal it. At first, Ethan couldn't make sense of what he was looking at. The shape didn't belong to the forest. It rose too straight, too deliberate. Edges where there shouldn't have been edges. Lines that cut against the natural chaos of trees and snow. He narrowed his eyes, letting them adjust. The wind dragged another curtain of snow across the clearing, thinning for just a second longer. And then it came into focus. A tree. Not just any tree. And it towered above the others, its trunk massive, easily 10 feet across at the base. The bark was dark and ridged, frozen solid, the kind of ancient growth that had been standing long before roads cut through these mountains. But it wasn't the tree that held him still. It was what had been built into it. Ethan took a slow step forward. The structure wrapped around the upper branches, suspended 15 feet above the ground, spanning across limbs that should never have supported that kind of weight. Wood beams, cross-braced and reinforced, forming walls, angles, a roofline that was barely visible beneath the ice. A treehouse, but not the kind a kid would build with scrap boards and nails. This was something else. Bigger, engineered, deliberate. Every inch of it was sealed in ice. Thick, clear sheets clung to the walls, as hanging in jagged layers from the roof. The windows, actual windows, were intact beneath the frozen coating, their glass dim and clouded, reflecting the pale gray light of the storm. It looked like it had been trapped in time, or buried by it. Ethan stopped at the edge of the clearing. Didn't step out. Didn't expose himself. He scanned first. Always scan. Left to right. High to low. Tree line. Ground. Branches. Nothing moved. No fresh tracks in the snow. No disturbed ground. No sign of recent activity. The storm would have covered most of it anyway. But still, there was something wrong. Not danger. Not immediate. But wrong. Shadow moved past him. Slow this time. Not charging ahead like before. The dog stepped into the clearing with careful precision, nose lifting slightly, testing the air. His ears stayed forward, much locked, his tail low but steady. Ethan followed a few steps behind. His boots sank deep into the snow with each step, the powder soft here, untouched. The only tracks in the clearing were the ones they were making. That settled something. No one else had been here, at least not recently. The wind dropped for a moment, leaving behind a strange, hollow quiet. Ethan could hear the creak of the tree. Low, deep, like the wood itself was under pressure. He tilted his head slightly, listened. Not structural failure, just weight, ice, snow, time. His gaze moved up again, tracing the lines of the structure. The supports were solid. Too solid. Whoever built this knew what they were doing. Load-bearing angles, reinforced joints. Not amateur work, not something thrown together, something planned. It's something that had been meant to last. "Who the hell?" he muttered under his breath. Shadow stopped at the base of the tree, looked up, then let out a soft sound. Not the low warning from before. Something different. Quieter. Almost familiar. Ethan stepped beside him. The trunk loomed overhead, the bark coated in a thin layer of ice that caught the light in dull reflections. Snow had gathered at the base, forming a mound that sloped upward against the wood. He circled slowly, one step at a time, eyes moving constantly, searching for access points, entrances, anything. The first pass showed nothing. Just tree, just ice, just the unnatural weight of the structure above. He moved again. Second pass. Wider arc. And then, there. Partially buried in the snow, a line, too straight to be natural. Ethan crouched, brushing snow away with his gloved hand. Wood, worn, gray with age. He cleared more. A rung, then another. A ladder, built directly into the trunk. The lower section was almost completely swallowed by snow, but the upper part stretched upward, disappearing into the frozen mass above. Ethan sat back on his heels, studied it. The wood was old, not rotted, not broken, just aged, weathered in a way that only came from years, decades. He pressed a gloved hand against one of the exposed rungs. Solid, no give. He leaned his weight into it slightly. Still solid. Shadow stepped closer, placed one paw on the base of the ladder, looked up again, then back at Ethan. Ethan didn't respond. Not right away. He stood slowly, brushing snow from his hands. His eyes moved back up to the structure, 15 feet, maybe more. In this wind, in this cold, every instinct he had said the same thing. Don't. Unknown structure, unstable conditions, no visibility, no exit plan. He looked back at the forest behind them. Couldn't see the cabin. Couldn't see anything beyond 20 yards. The storm had swallowed it all. Going back wasn't safer, just familiar. He looked down at Shadow. The dog hadn't moved, still watching him, waiting, not pushing, not pulling. Just there. Ethan exhaled slowly. His breath hung in the air, then vanished. He stepped closer to the ladder, tested the first rung again, then the second. His boot pressed down carefully, shifting his weight just enough to feel the response. Stable. He adjusted his grip on the rifle, slinging it across his back instead. Freed his hands, another old habit. Climb light. Stay balanced. He reached up, wrapped his fingers around the next rung. Cold bit through the glove instantly. He ignored it, pulled himself up. The ladder didn't move, didn't creak, didn't shift, just held. Shadow stayed below, watching. Ethan climbed slowly. Each movement controlled, deliberate. Boot, hand, shift, balance. The wind pushed against him, trying to pull him off center, but the tree blocked most of it here, the trunk acting as a barrier. Halfway up, his foot slipped. Just for a second. Ice on the rung. His weight dropped. His grip tightened instantly, muscles locking, body flattening against the trunk. For a split second, another place, another climb, dust instead of snow, hands slipping on loose rock, someone shouting behind him. "Don't look down!" Ethan's jaw tightened, and he forced the memory out, focused on the present, the rung, the next move. He adjusted his footing, found grip, kept going. At the top, a small platform extended out from the trunk, barely wide enough for two people, or one man and a dog. The entrance to the structure sat directly in front of him. A door, or what had been a door. Now it was sealed. Encased in a thick layer of ice, the wood beneath barely visible. The edges fused shut like it had never been meant to open again. Ethan stepped onto the platform. The wood groaned softly under his weight. He froze, listened. Nothing followed. He shifted again, slow, careful. The structure held. Below, Shadow let out a single, sharp bark. Ethan looked down. The dog stood at the base of the tree, staring up at him, waiting. Ethan turned back to the door. Reaching out, he pressed his gloved hand against the ice. Solid, unbroken. No handle, no seam, nothing. He moved along the edge, scanning for any weakness, any point of entry. The wind shifted again, howling through the branches above, sending a thin sheet of ice cracking somewhere along the roofline. Ethan's eyes tracked the sound instinctively, then dropped. To the bottom edge of the door, where it met the platform. There. A gap, small, barely visible. The ice was thinner there, the wood darker, worn. Ethan crouched, brushing away snow and ice with his hand. The gap widened just enough to see through. Dark inside. No light, no movement, just space. He sat back slightly, considered it, then looked down at Shadow again. The dog didn't bark this time, didn't move, just watched. Ethan turned back to the gap, but then slowly, deliberately, he set his rifle down. The wood beneath it gave a soft, hollow sound. Not weak, just old. Ethan kept one hand resting on the stock for a moment longer, feeling the vibrations settle through the platform, listening for anything that didn't belong. Nothing. Just the wind. He shifted his weight, lowering himself onto one knee in front of the door. The ice coating it was thicker than it had looked from a distance. Clear in some places, clouded in others, layered like it had built up over years, maybe decades. His breath fogged the surface, then vanished. He leaned closer to the gap at the bottom. Cold air pushed out from inside. Not warm, but different. Still. Sheltered. The kind of air that hadn't moved in a long time. He reached forward, brushing his glove along the edge of the opening. Ice cracked lightly under the pressure, small flakes breaking loose and falling to the platform below. The gap widened just enough. Not by much, but enough. Ethan paused, looked back once over his shoulder. The forest was gone, swallowed by white. The latter barely visible beneath him. Shadow was still there, a dark shape at the base of the tree. Waiting. Ethan turned back. Decision made. He slid his pack off one shoulder, then the other, easing it down onto the platform beside the rifle. He unzipped it halfway, pulled out a small flashlight, and held it between his teeth for a second while he adjusted his gloves. The beam flickered on. Thin, focused. He angled it toward the gap. The light cut through the darkness inside, revealing nothing but floorboards coated in a thin layer of frost. No movement, no shapes, well, no sound. He shifted again, lowering himself flat against the platform. Chest down, one arm reaching forward. The wood was cold against him, pulling heat through his jacket instantly. He ignored it, pushed his pack ahead first, guiding it through the opening with his forearm. It scraped along the edges, catching once, then slipping through and disappearing into the dark. He followed, shoulder first, turning his head sideways to fit. The ice pressed against his back, hard and unyielding, catching on the fabric of his coat. For a second, he stopped, measured the space, too tight, but not impossible. He exhaled, flattened his chest, and pushed. The wood beneath him shifted slightly. Not enough to matter. Just enough to remind him he was inside something that had been left behind. Halfway through, his jacket snagged. A sharp pull at his shoulder. He froze, didn't force it. Slowly, carefully, he reached back, fingers searching along the fabric until they found the catch. A splinter. Small, hooked. He worked it loose. The material gave with a soft tear. Then he moved again. The pressure released. And suddenly, he was through. He dropped forward onto the floor inside, catching himself on his hands as the cold wood met his palms. The air hit differently here. Still cold, but contained. Quiet. The storm outside became distant, muffled, like it had been pushed behind a wall. Ethan stayed where he was for a second, breathing, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No shifting weight. No presence. Just silence. He reached back, pulling his legs through, then rolled onto one knee and pushed himself up. The flashlight beam cut across the room and stopped. The space wasn't what he expected. Not unfinished, not crude. A real room. Walls, floor, ceiling, all built with precision. Furniture sat where it had been left, covered in white sheets that had stiffened with frost over time. A table, 2 chairs. Shelves lining one wall filled with books whose spines had faded into soft, indistinct colors. Everything was coated in a thin layer of ice. Not thick, just enough to preserve, like the cold had sealed the room in place. Ethan didn't move deeper right away. He turned slowly. Clearing. Left corner. Empty. Right corner. Empty. Ceiling. No movement. Doorway ahead. Closed. He stepped forward. Slow. Measured. Each foot placed without sound. The floorboards creaked once beneath him. A low, tired sound that echoed through the room and then disappeared. He stopped. Waited. Nothing answered. He moved again. The beam of the flashlight passed over the walls, catching on framed photographs. The glass had fogged over with frost, obscuring the images beneath. Faces hidden. Moments lost. He didn't stop to study them. Not yet. He moved to the table, ran a gloved hand along its surface. Dust beneath the ice, undisturbed. No recent contact. He checked the chair, pulled it slightly. The legs scraped softly against the floor. Still functional. Still solid. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. This place wasn't falling apart. It had been left, preserved, on purpose. He turned toward the far wall. The doorway there stood slightly ajar. Not wide, just enough to show darkness beyond. He approached it slowly. One step, then another. His hand reached out, resting lightly against the wood. Cold, dry. He pushed. The door opened without resistance. The beam of the flashlight slid into the next space. Narrow. A hallway. Shelves on both sides. Packed. Tools. Rope. Old equipment stacked neatly, like it had been organized with care before being abandoned. Ethan stepped inside. The air here felt even stiller. He moved forward, scanning each shelf as he passed. Camping gear, metal tins, boxes sealed tight. Nothing disturbed. Nothing missing. Everything in place. At the end of the hallway, he stopped. The light settled on it. A door. Not wood. Steel. Thick. Reinforced. The kind that didn't belong in a place like this. It stood solid at the end of the narrow space, its surface dull beneath a thin film of frost. While a heavy lock sat at its center, untouched by time, Ethan didn't move closer. Not yet. His eyes tracked the edges, the hinges, the frame. No visible damage. No sign it had ever been forced. Whatever was behind that door had been meant to stay there. Behind him, something shifted. Ethan turned instantly. The beam snapped back down the hallway and froze. At the entrance, a dark shape filled the gap. Low, still, watching. Shadow. The dog had climbed the ladder, slipped through the same gap, and now stood at the threshold, snow still clinging to his fur, his breath visible in short, steady bursts. Ethan exhaled, just once, then looked back at the steel door. Shadow stepped forward, walked past him, and sat down directly in front of it, without a sound, without hesitation, without doubt. Ethan watched him, and then slowly, he stepped closer. The air tightened around him. Not colder, just heavier. Ethan stopped a few feet from the steel door, his boots settling into the thin layer of frost that coated the floor. The flashlight beam held steady in his hand, resting on the lock, then drifting upward along the flat, silent surface. No markings at first glance, just steel. But the longer he looked, the more details began to surface. Fine lines, etched, not random, intentional. Symbols carved shallow into the metal, faded by time, softened by frost. Not letters, not anything he recognized right away. His eyes narrowed. Patterns. He shifted the light slightly. The shapes caught differently under the beam. Some geometric, some almost like initials, or signatures. He leaned closer. Breath fogged the surface, then vanished again, and Shadow didn't move. The dog sat directly in front of the door, head slightly lowered, eyes fixed on it like he was waiting for something on the other side to move first. Ethan crouched beside him, not touching the door yet, just observing. Always observe first. He scanned the frame. Hinges. External. Heavy duty. No rust. That stood out. Everything else in this place had aged. Wood had dried. Metal on the shelves had dulled. But this door still held its integrity, like it had been sealed properly, protected. He reached out, paused, then placed his gloved hand against the steel. Cold, but not as cold as it should have been. That made him pull back slightly. He glanced over his shoulder, back down the hallway. Nothing. The main room beyond was still, silent, frozen in place. He turned back, while his hand dropped to the lock. Old, but not broken. He tested it. Gently. It didn't move. Locked tight. He exhaled slowly, then shifted back onto his feet. Not forcing it. Not yet. Something about this place. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt paused, like someone had stepped out and never come back. Ethan stepped away from the door. The decision was quiet, unspoken. He turned and walked back down the hallway. Shadow didn't follow at first. He stayed seated, watching. Then, after a moment, he stood and padded after Ethan, his paws silent on the frozen wood. Back in the main room, the air felt different again. Less tight, more open. Ethan swept the flashlight slowly across the space. This time, he didn't just scan for threats. He looked. Really looked. The table again, the chairs, the shelves. And he moved toward the photographs on the wall, raised his hand, and wiped a section of frost away with the back of his glove. The image beneath came through slowly. A man. Mid-50s maybe. Standing in front of the same treehouse, but not frozen. Alive. The forest behind him green. Sunlit. The structure looked newer then. Less weathered. Less buried. The man's expression was calm. Not smiling, but not hard either. Just steady. Ethan stared at it for a second longer than he meant to. then moved to the next frame, wiped it clean. The same man again, different setting. Inside a room, paintings behind him, not simple ones. Large, detailed, old. Ethan's brow tightened slightly. He moved faster now, frame to frame, clearing frost. Each image revealing more of the same story. The man. Always the man. Well, sometimes alone, sometimes standing beside objects, art pieces, sculptures, things that didn't belong in a place like this. In one, he stood next to a canvas that Ethan recognized without knowing why. Not the name, not the artist, just the feeling. It didn't belong in the woods. It belonged somewhere protected, somewhere watched. Ethan stepped back. The flashlight beam drifted across the room again, then stopped. On the table, a book, leather-bound, cracked along the edges. He hadn't noticed it before, or maybe he had, and ignored it. He walked over, picked it up. The cover was stiff, cold, but intact. He opened it carefully. The pages inside were yellowed, brittle at the corners, but readable. The handwriting was clean, precise, controlled. The first line sat at the top of the page. June 3rd, 1991. As Ethan didn't react outwardly, but something in his chest shifted. He read, "Finally finished reinforcing the outer structure. The ice will come. It always does. But this place will hold." Ethan turned the page. The world has grown loud, too loud. Too many hands reaching for what they did not earn. Another page. "I trusted the wrong people. Blood does not mean loyalty. I see that now." Ethan's thumb paused against the edge of the paper. His eyes flicked back to the photographs on the wall, then back to the journal. He kept reading. "The collection is almost complete. 48 pieces moved so far. Each one accounted for. Each one safer here than anywhere else." Ethan's jaw tightened. Collection. The word sat there, heavy. He flipped forward. Entries became shorter, more fragmented. "Watched again today. Or maybe imagined it. Hard to tell anymore. They will not find this place. Not unless they are meant to. I am running out of time." Ethan stopped. The last entry sat alone on the page. Dated February 14th, 1992. "If you're reading this, then you were never meant to look for it. That means you're the right one." Ethan closed the journal slowly. The room seemed quieter now, if that was even possible. He looked around again, at the photographs, at the shelves, at the door down the hallway, then back at the journal in his hands. Shadow stood near the center of the room, watching him. Not the door anymore. Him. Ethan let out a slow breath. His fingers tightened slightly around the leather cover. The man in the photos. The journal. The steel door. Pieces. All of it pieces. And none of it random. When he looked toward the hallway again. The darkness beyond it felt different now. Not empty. Waiting. Ethan set the journal back down on the table. Carefully. Exactly where it had been. Then he turned. Shadow was already moving, back toward the hallway, without hesitation, without doubt. Ethan followed. The hallway felt narrower the second time. Not physically, just closer. Like the walls had shifted inward when he wasn't looking. Ethan didn't rush, didn't hesitate either. His steps were quieter now, more controlled. The flashlight beam stayed low, cutting across the floor first, then rising slowly, methodically, mapping every inch before he moved through it. Shadow reached the steel door first. Sat again. Same position. Same stillness. Like he had never left. Ethan stopped a few feet behind him. This time, he didn't study the room, didn't scan the shelves, didn't check the corners again. He already had. Nothing had changed. Except him. He stepped forward, close enough now that the door filled his entire field of view. The etched markings looked clearer under the light. Not random. Symbols layered over each other. Some curved, some sharp, almost like someone had carved them in stages or over time. Ethan ran his eyes across them, then stopped. One mark stood out, smaller than the others, near the edge of the lock, a faint scratch. Not part of the pattern, not intentional. Damage. Recent. Ethan crouched. The movement was slow, deliberate. His hand hovered just above the surface. Didn't touch it. Just close enough to feel the difference in temperature. The scratch hadn't frosted over the same way. It hadn't been there long enough. That thought settled quietly, then stayed. He leaned back slightly, looked at the hinges again. Still solid, frame intact. Lock undisturbed. Except for that mark. Shadow shifted. Not much. Just enough to pull Ethan's attention. The dog's nose moved toward the right side of the door. Not the center. Not the lock. The frame. Ethan followed the motion. His light moved with it. Along the edge, down, then, there, a seam, barely visible, where the wooden wall met the steel frame. Too clean, too straight. Ethan reached out. This time he touched it. The wood was colder than the rest of the room. He pressed lightly. Nothing. Pressed again. Harder. Still nothing. He leaned closer, adjusted his angle, ran his fingers along the seam. Feeling. Not looking. A small gap, no wider than a fingernail, hidden behind the natural grain of the wood. He shifted his grip, pressed inward. Nothing. Then sideways. A faint click. So soft it almost didn't exist. Ethan froze. Listened. The sound didn't repeat. Didn't echo, but something had changed. The panel. He could feel it now. Slight give under his hand. He slid his fingers along the edge, found a point where the wood dipped just slightly, hooked his glove into it, pulled. The panel came loose. Not fast, not dramatic, just opened. A small compartment revealed itself inside the wall. Dark. Empty. No, not empty. Something rested at the bottom. Metal. Dull. Ethan reached in, pulled it out. A key. Brass. Worn smooth along the edges. Tarnished green in places where time had settled into it. He held it up to the light, but turned it slowly. Simple design. No markings. No numbers. Nothing to explain it. Behind him, the wind howled faintly through the walls. A reminder. This wasn't normal. None of this was. Ethan looked back at the door, at the lock, then at the key in his hand. His jaw tightened slightly. Not from fear. From recognition. Setups like this. They weren't accidents. They were decisions. He stepped closer. Shadow didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. Just watched. Ethan raised the key, lined it up with the lock, paused. His hand hovered there for a second longer than necessary. Not doubt, just awareness. The moment before something changes. He slid the key in. It fit. Too easily. The metal settled into place with a soft, final sound. Ethan's fingers tightened around it. He turned. The lock resisted at first, then gave. A deep internal click echoed through the door. Heavy, definite, final. Ethan didn't pull it open right away. He waited, listening. The silence on the other side didn't change. No movement, no shift. Nothing waiting, or nothing that wanted to be heard. He pulled the handle. The door moved, slow, reluctant, like it had been closed for too long. The hinges groaned low, the sound dragging out into the hallway as the seal broke. Cold air pushed out, different from before, denser, stiller, older. Ethan angled the flashlight forward. The beam slipped into the darkness beyond, and stopped. Not because the space ended, because it filled. The walls, covered, frame to frame, canvas to canvas, paintings, real ones, Not prints, not copies. Originals. Each one preserved behind glass. Protected. Untouched. Ethan didn't step inside. Not yet. His eyes moved across the room slowly, taking it in. Processing. Shelves lined the lower walls. Objects rested on them. Metal, stone, shapes he couldn't immediately identify. In the center, a table, large, solid, and on it, boxes, neat, stacked, deliberate. The beam shifted, caught the edge of something inside one of the open cases. Yellow, reflective. Ethan's breath slowed, not quickened. Slowed, focused. The kind of focus that came before action, before understanding. He took one step forward, then another. Crossed the threshold. Shadow followed. Silent. The floor inside the room didn't creak, didn't move. Solid, reinforced, built to hold weight. Ethan moved to the nearest wall, lifted the light. I'm closer now. The painting under the glass. He didn't know the name, but he knew it mattered. He could feel it. The brushwork, the depth, the age. It wasn't something someone left behind. It was something someone protected. He turned. The beam swept across the table, stopped on the open case. Inside. Gold. Bars. Stacked. Clean. Stamped. Real. Ethan stared at it for a second, then looked away. The amount didn't matter. Not yet. The room did. The setup. The intent. His eyes landed on the far side of the table. An envelope. Thick, cream-colored, sealed, 4 words written across the front. To whoever finds this. Ethan didn't move, didn't reach for it. Just stood there. The weight of the room pressing in. The silence deeper than anything outside. Shadow stepped forward, stopped beside the table, looked at the envelope, then back at Ethan. Ethan exhaled slowly, then reached out. His fingers closed around the envelope. The paper was thick, dry, preserved the same way everything else in this room had been. Protected, sealed, untouched by time. He didn't open it right away, just held it, weighed it in his hand like it might tell him something before he even broke the seal. Shadow stood beside him, still as stone, eyes flicking once toward the door behind them, then back to Ethan. Ethan noticed. Always noticed. The dog wasn't relaxed, but he wasn't tense either. Just aware. Watching. Ethan slid a thumb under the edge of the seal, paused, then broke it. The sound was small, soft, but in that room it carried. He pulled the contents free. Several sheets, handwritten, same style as the journal. Clean, precise. When he angled the flashlight, letting the beam fall across the first page, and read, "My name is Leonard Voss. If you are reading this, then I am no longer alive, and you have found what I spent the last years of my life protecting." Ethan didn't react. Not outwardly, but his grip tightened slightly on the paper. His eyes moved down. "I built this place because I ran out of places to trust." A faint shift in the air. Or maybe just the storm outside. Ethan kept reading. "I made my fortune collecting beauty. Things the world creates when it forgets how cruel it can be. Paintings, sculpture, artifacts, history itself held in objects people would kill to own." The words sat heavy. Not dramatic, just true. Ethan's gaze lifted briefly, swept the room again. The paintings, the gold, the sealed boxes, then back to the letter. "Ma'am, I thought money gave me control. It doesn't. It attracts attention. It invites hands. It invites betrayal." A pause. A line break. Then, "I trusted people I should not have trusted. family among them. Ethan's jaw shifted slightly. Not emotion, recognition. He turned the page. The handwriting remained steady. No signs of panic. No decline. Just clarity. So I removed it. All of it. Piece by piece, quietly, legally, until there was nothing left for them to take. Ethan's eyes moved faster now. Scanning. Processing. I did not hide this to keep it forever. I hid it so it could be found the right way. He slowed. Read that line again. Then continued. If you found this place by searching, then you are not the one it was meant for. A faint crack echoed somewhere above them, ice shifting along the roof, but how Ethan didn't look up, didn't break focus. If you found this place by accident, by need, by circumstance you did not control, then you are exactly who I was waiting for. Ethan's breathing stayed even, but something in his chest shifted. Quiet. Subtle. He kept reading. There are documents in the cases on this table. Legal documents. A trust structure built with a man I believe to be the last honest lawyer I would ever meet. His name is included. You will find him. Ethan's eyes flicked to the boxes, then back. This collection has been appraised. At the time I sealed this room, its value exceeded $245 million. Ethan didn't blink, didn't react. The number didn't land the way it should have. It just existed. Another detail, another piece. The letter continued. You will be challenged, but they will come. They will claim it was stolen, hidden, taken from them. They will say you have no right. Ethan's head tilted slightly. A shift in posture. Alert. You do. Simple. Direct. You have it because you were not looking for it. Ethan lowered the paper slightly. Just for a second. Shadow moved again. Subtle. Positioning himself between Ethan and the open doorway. Watching. Always watching. Ethan lifted the letter again. One condition remains. His eyes slowed, focused. You must not become what they were. Silence pressed in. You must not use this to take. You must use it to build. A faint flicker of light passed across the edge of his vision. For a second. A different room, harsh lighting, concrete walls, a voice cutting through static. Clear the room! Move! Ethan blinked. The treehouse came back. Cold, still, silent. He steadied himself, finished the letter. If you are reading this, then I have placed my faith in you without ever knowing your name. That is either my final mistake or my only success. The last line sat alone. Do something better than I did. Ethan lowered the pages. The room felt different now. Not quieter, not louder, just heavier. Like the weight of what he held had settled into the space itself. He folded the letter once, carefully. Not rushed, not careless. Then placed it back on the table, exactly where it had been. His eyes moved again, slower this time, taking everything in with a different lens. Not just objects, not just value, intent, design, purpose. Shadow shifted, a low sound in his throat. Not warning, not yet. Ethan turned slightly, now looked toward the door. Nothing moved, nothing visible. But something had changed. The air, the silence, the way the storm pressed against the walls. Ethan stepped back from the table. His eyes dropped briefly to the gold bars again, then to the paintings, then to the boxes. All of it sitting there, waiting. He didn't reach for any of it, didn't touch anything else. Instead, he turned, walked back toward the hallway. Shadow moved immediately, falling in beside him. As they stepped out of the room, Ethan reached back and pulled the steel door closed. The heavy seal settled into place with a deep, final sound. He locked it. The key turned smoothly. No resistance. like it had been waiting for that motion. Ethan removed it, held it in his hand for a second, then slipped it into his pocket. Close, secure. The hallway felt tighter now, more confined, or maybe he was just more aware of it. They moved through it without stopping, back into the main room. The cold seemed sharper here, more present. Ethan crossed to the entrance, looked down at the gap he had crawled through, then back at the room one last time. The photographs, the table, the journal, everything exactly as it had been. Except now, it wasn't unknown. It wasn't a mystery. It was a choice. Ethan crouched, pushed his pack through first, then followed. The cold outside hit him again as he dropped onto the platform. Sharp, real, immediate. Shadow came after him without hesitation. The wind had picked up again. Snow cutting across the clearing in hard, angled lines. Ethan grabbed his rifle, slung it back over his shoulder, and then looked down at the forest below. White, endless, silent. He didn't move right away. Just stood there, the key pressing lightly against his chest through the fabric of his coat, the weight of the letter still sitting somewhere deeper than that. Shadow stepped to the edge of the platform, looked back at him. Ethan met his gaze, then gave a small nod, and started down. The ladder felt steeper on the way back, not because it had changed, because he had. Ethan moved carefully, boots finding the same rungs, the same pressure points he'd memorized on the way up. His grip stayed tight, controlled, even as the wind pushed harder now, slipping through the branches with a sharper edge. Halfway down, he paused. Not because he needed to, because something in him said to. He looked out across the clearing. The storm had thickened again, swallowing distance, bending the trees into slow, strained arcs. Snow moved in sheets now, not flakes. Visibility cut down to almost nothing. The treehouse behind him groaned softly. Just wait. Just ice. But it sounded different now. He climbed the rest of the way down. Shadow was already on the ground, circling once, checking the perimeter without being told. Nose low, ears up, tracking. Ethan stepped off the final rung. His boots sank deep. Cold rushed in again. Real, immediate. He adjusted the rifle across his shoulder. Scanned. Left. Right. No tracks but theirs. No shapes breaking through the storm. Nothing moving, except the wind. Shadow returned to his side. Close. Closer than before. Ethan noticed that too. The dog didn't drift ahead this time. Didn't lead. He stayed tight. Watching the trees. Watching the spaces between them. Ethan exhaled slowly. All right, he muttered. Not a plan. Just a direction. They moved. Back the way they came. The slope came first. Steeper going up. More dangerous. Ethan took it slow. One step, test, shift, commit. Shadow climbed ahead again, but this time he didn't disappear over the ridge. He stopped every few feet, looking back, waiting, adjusting, matching Ethan's pace. Halfway up, Ethan's boot slipped again. Snow gave way, his weight dropped, but this time, he corrected faster, shifted, recovered, didn't fall, didn't flash, didn't lose the moment. He reached the top, stood there for a second longer than necessary, breathing, listening, nothing, just storm. They moved again, through the trees, through the white, back toward something that resembled direction more than certainty. Time stretched again. Minutes, hours, didn't matter. The cabin didn't appear all at once. It emerged, a shadow in the storm, then a shape, then structure, the roofline cutting through the snow. Ethan didn't speed up, didn't rush. He approached the same way he always did, from the side, not straight on. Checked angles, checked blind spots, checked for anything that didn't belong. Nothing. The door was still shut. No new tracks. No movement. Shadow circled once, then stopped. Clear. Ethan reached the door, opened it, stepped inside. The warmth didn't hit. Not like before. The cabin felt smaller, tighter, like something had followed him in. Not physically, but close enough. He shut the door behind him, locked it, and set the rifle down in its usual place. Everything exactly where it had been, except him. Shadow moved to the center of the room, sat, watched. Ethan pulled off his gloves, dropped them onto the table, then his coat. Slow, deliberate, like shedding layers wasn't just about the cold. He walked to the stove, added wood, adjusted the vent. The fire responded slowly, flames building back up, light returning in soft, uneven pulses. He stood there for a moment, hands resting on the edge of the iron, then turned, moved to the table, sat. The room settled around him, quiet, still, except for the fire, and the wind, and the faint, constant awareness sitting just beneath everything. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the key, set it on the table. It made a small sound against the wood. Solid. Real. And he stared at it. Didn't touch it again. Not yet. Shadow shifted, moved closer, rested his head lightly against Ethan's knee. Ethan didn't react right away. Then his hand dropped, rested on the dog's neck, fingers pressing into the fur, grounding, steady. Time passed, unmeasured. The fire built. The room warmed. But something didn't ease. Ethan stood suddenly, moved to the window, looked out. Nothing but white. No visibility. No sign of anything beyond the immediate. But his eyes didn't relax. They scanned, tracked, measured. Something was off. He didn't know what. Didn't have proof. Just awareness. The kind that didn't come from imagination. It came from experience, from patterns, from things that didn't line up. He turned back, walked to the table again, picked up the key. Turned it over in his hand. Weight. Balance old, but not forgotten. He reached for his pack, pulled it closer, unzipped it, took out his phone. No signal. Of course. He stared at the screen for a second, then powered it down. Not useful. Not here. He set it aside, sat again. The decision formed quietly. No debate, no back and forth. Just next step. He reached for the map pinned to the wall, unfolded it across the table, marked routes, distances, closest road, nearest town, nearest place with a signal. His finger stopped on a name. Boise. Too far for tonight, but not for tomorrow. He folded the map again, set it aside. The key stayed in his hand. Shadow lifted his head, watched him. Ethan looked down at the dog, held his gaze for a second, then gave a small nod. Not to the plan, to the reality of it. He wasn't alone anymore. Not really. Not after what he'd seen. Not after what he held. Outside, the wind shifted again, stronger now, driving harder against the cabin. Ethan stood, moved to the door, checked the lock, then the window, then the back wall. Routine, but tighter, more deliberate. He turned off the main light, let the fire carry the room. Shadows stretched longer across the walls. The cabin fell into a dim, controlled quiet. Ethan sat again, closer to the wall this time, not centered, not exposed. Shadow moved with him, lay down beside the chair, facing the door, always facing the door. Ethan leaned back slightly, eyes half-lidded, not sleeping, never fully sleeping. The fire cracked, the wind pressed, and somewhere deep in the silence, the feeling stayed. Not fear, not yet, but close, very close. Ethan didn't sleep. Not really. His eyes closed at some point. His body leaned back just enough to rest, but his mind stayed near the surface, floating just under the line where sound became meaning. The fire cracked. The wind pressed. Shadow didn't move. Hours passed like that. Until a sound. Soft. Wrong. Ethan's eyes opened instantly. No hesitation. No confusion. He didn't move his head. Didn't shift his body. Just listened. There it was again. Not the wind. Not the trees. Closer. Outside. Near the side wall. Shadow was already up. Standing. Still. Ears forward. No growl, not yet. Ethan's hand moved slowly. Not for the rifle. Not first. For the light. He kept it off. Darkness held advantage. Always had. He leaned forward slightly, shifting his weight without sound, and his feet found the floor with precision, avoiding the loose board near the stove, the one that creaked if you stepped wrong. Another sound. A faint crunch. Snow under pressure. Not falling. Stepped on. Ethan's jaw tightened. He moved. Low. Controlled. One step toward the wall, then another. Shadow adjusted with him, keeping parallel, body angled toward the door. The sound stopped. Ethan froze. Counted. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. Then a shadow passed the edge of the window. Quick. Too quick for the storm. Ethan's body reacted instantly. He dropped to one knee, shifting position away from the direct line of sight. His hand reached back, pulling the rifle up in one smooth motion, the barrel angled low but ready. Shadow let out a low growl now, barely audible, controlled. Ethan's eyes tracked the window, waited. As the wind surged again, pushing snow against the glass in a sudden burst. For a second, everything outside blurred into white, then cleared. Nothing. No shape. No movement. But the feeling stayed. Not imagination. Presence. Ethan shifted his position again, moving along the interior wall, keeping distance from the door while maintaining a line of sight. He didn't speak. Didn't call out. Silence was safer. The latch on the door rattled. Once, light. Testing. Ethan's grip tightened. Shadow moved closer to the door. Body low now. Tense. Another rattle. Stronger. Then a pause. The wind howled, covering everything. And then the handle turned. Slow. Deliberate. The lock held. The metal stopped. Ethan didn't move. Didn't breathe. The handle turned again. Harder this time. Then stopped. Silence. A long one. Or too long. Ethan's eyes flicked once toward the back of the cabin. Exit route. Window. Distance. Options. Then back to the door. A shadow filled the gap beneath it. Barely visible. But there. Someone was standing on the other side. Shadow's growl deepened. Ethan lifted the rifle slightly. Not aiming. Not yet. Just ready. Then a voice. Muffled through the wood. Hey! Casual. Too casual. Ethan didn't respond. Didn't acknowledge it. The voice came again. Cabin's not marked on any map I saw. A pause. Snow shifted outside. We just need to get out of the storm. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. Just. We. Plural. Shadow's ears twitched, tracking more than one direction now. Ethan shifted his stance. Subtle. Enough to change angles. The voice continued. You in there? A knock, not hard. No, not soft either. Measured. Controlled. Ethan stayed silent. The man outside exhaled audibly. Then, footsteps, circling, moving away from the door, toward the side of the cabin. Ethan turned his head slightly. Tracking. Shadow pivoted instantly, moving to the window, his body blocking part of the frame. Another shadow passed. Closer now. Too close. Ethan moved, fast, but quiet. He reached out and pulled the curtain across the window, cut the line of sight, then stepped back. Shadow stayed in position. Ethan lowered his voice. Back. One word. Soft. Shadow obeyed immediately, moved off the window, repositioned near the center, watching everything. The footsteps stopped. Silence again. Then, a sharp sound. Glass. Cracking. Not breaking. Testing. Ethan's body locked in, every muscle coiled. The sound didn't repeat. Instead, the footsteps returned, back to the door. The handle rattled again, harder this time, then stopped. Another pause. Then the voice came again. Different now. Less casual. Storm's not your only problem tonight. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his grip tightened. The man continued. We know what you found. The words settled into the room like weight. Shadow's growl came back. Lower. Deeper. Ethan didn't respond, didn't ask, didn't confirm. Silence held. Then, the footsteps backed away. Slow, deliberate. Not retreating, just repositioning. The shadow beneath the door disappeared. The wind filled the space again. Ethan stayed where he was. Didn't move. Didn't relax. Time stretched. Seconds. Minutes. Then, a crash from the side of the cabin. Wood. Strained. Ethan moved instantly, cutting across the room toward the sound. Rifle up now, angle tight, eyes scanning for the entry point. Shadow followed. Fast. Precise. Another hit. Harder. The wall bowed slightly inward, not enough to break. Yet. Ethan shifted position again, moving away from the direct line, setting up a better angle, forcing whoever was outside into a narrow entry if they tried to push through. The next impact didn't come. Instead, silence. Again. Heavy. Waiting. Ethan's breathing stayed slow, controlled. His eyes never left the wall. Shadow's body was rigid now, every muscle engaged. Then, a faint sound. Different. Not impact. Closer. Right behind them. Ethan turned, too late to anticipate, but not too late to react. The back window shattered inward. Glass sprayed across the floor. A cold air rushed in, and a shape forced through the opening. Fast. Low. Ethan pivoted, rifle rising. Shadow launched. The impact hit before the man could fully clear the frame. Shadow collided mid-air, driving into the intruder's chest with full force. The man staggered backward, losing balance as his boots slipped on shattered glass and ice. A sharp grunt cut through the room. Ethan pivoted with the motion, rifle tracking, but he didn't fire. Too close. Shadow was on him. The dog's jaws clamped onto the man's sleeve, dragging him sideways, forcing him off balance again. The intruder tried to twist free, one arm coming up instinctively to protect his face. Get him off! A second voice outside. Closer. Ethan's head snapped toward the broken window. Another shape moved behind the frame. 2. Minimum. Ethan moved fast. He grabbed the nearest chair and kicked it hard toward the window, slamming it into the opening, buying a fraction of a second. Shadow! Down! The command cut, sharp, precise. Shadow released instantly, dropping low and pulling back, exactly as trained. The man inside stumbled forward, gasping, clutching his arm. Ethan stepped in, fast, controlled. The rifle came up, not fired, but pressed forward, forcing distance, forcing space. Back! One word. Cold. The man froze. For a second, everything held. Then, a flash. Metal. The intruder's hand moved too fast, something glinting in his grip as he lunged forward. Ethan shifted, not back, side. The motion was clean, minimal. He redirected the man's momentum with his shoulder, sending him crashing into the edge of the table instead. The object clattered across the floor. A blade. Short. Utility. Not military, but sharp enough. Shadow surged again, this time lower, driving into the man's legs. The intruder went down hard, hitting the floor with a heavy impact that knocked the air from his lungs. Outside, another voice. Move, now! Footsteps in the snow, retreating, fast. The second man didn't come through, didn't risk it. Ethan held position, rifle still up, tracking, listening. The wind swallowed the sound of retreat quickly, too quickly. Then, silence. Again. The man on the floor coughed, trying to push himself up. Ethan stepped closer, the rifle angled down now, controlled. Don't! The word stopped him. The intruder froze, breathing hard, eyes wide. Snow clung to his jacket, melting slowly onto the wood floor. Ethan's gaze flicked once to the window, then back. Who sent you? No answer. The man swallowed, shook his head. Ethan didn't press, didn't repeat the question. He didn't need to. The silence was already giving him everything. Shadow circled once, then stopped near Ethan's side again. His body still tense, eyes locked on the man. A low sound rumbled in his chest. Not a warning. A promise. The man shifted again. Slower this time. Careful. Look, he said, voice tight. We're not... Ethan stepped forward. Just one step. Enough. The man stopped talking. Ethan's eyes didn't change, didn't soften, didn't harden, just stayed, focused, present. You shouldn't have come here. The words were quiet, flat, final. The man looked at him, then at Shadow, then back. Something in his expression shifted, not fear, understanding. He nodded once, barely. Ethan stepped back, not far, just enough to give space. Get up. The man hesitated, then slowly pushed himself to his feet. His movements were stiff now, controlled, aware of every inch of distance between them. Ethan tilted his head slightly toward the door. Leave. No argument came. The man moved, carefully, past Ethan, past Shadow, toward the door. Ethan didn't lower the rifle, didn't turn his back. He tracked every step. The man reached the door, opened it. Cold air surged in. The storm hadn't eased. If anything, it had grown worse. The man stepped out into it, paused for a second, then disappeared into the white. Ethan shut the door immediately, locked it, reinforced it. The room fell silent again, but not the same silence. This one had edges, sharp ones. Shadow moved first. He circled once, and then stopped. Something was off. Ethan saw it instantly. The dog's gait, slight, uneven. Ethan dropped to one knee. Hey! His hand moved to Shadow's side. Felt it. Warm. Too warm. His fingers came away dark. Blood. Not heavy. But enough. Ethan's jaw tightened. Easy. He guided the dog down. Slow. Careful. Shadow resisted for a second, then gave in. Lay down. Still watching the room. Always watching. Ethan moved fast now. Controlled. He grabbed the med kit from his pack, opened it, cleaned his hands. Pressure first. Always pressure. He pressed gauze against the wound. Shadow flinched, but didn't pull away. Didn't make a sound. Ethan worked in silence. His movements precise, efficient, like he'd done it 100 times. Because he had. Different place, different reasons, same motions. The fire cracked behind him. The wind pressed harder against the walls, and for a second, just a second, the room shifted. Sand, heat, the smell of metal and dust. A voice. Weak. Don't let me. Ethan blinked hard. The cabin snapped back. Cold. Wood. Blood under his hands. Not then. Now. He adjusted the bandage, wrapped it tight, secured it. Shadow's breathing steadied. Slow. Strong. Ethan sat back. His hand stayed on the dog for a moment longer, then dropped. He didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there. The rifle leaned against the wall. The broken window still gaped open behind him, cold air slipping through the edges where the chair hadn't fully sealed it. The world had found him. That part was clear now. Ethan looked down at Shadow. The dog lifted his head slightly, met his gaze, then, just slowly, pushed himself up, unsteady, but standing. Ethan shook his head once. Stay. Shadow didn't. He took one step forward, then another, positioning himself between Ethan and the room. Between Ethan and the door. Ethan watched him, didn't argue, didn't repeat the command. The dog stood there, guarding, even now, even hurt. Ethan leaned back against the wall. His eyes drifted toward the table, where the key sat, where the map lay folded, where everything had changed. For a moment. Just a moment. He considered it. Walking away. Leaving it. Letting it disappear back into the forest. Letting the storm take it. Letting someone else deal with what came next. His eyes closed. Just for a second. The fire cracked. Shadow shifted. And something in that sound, that presence, pulled him back. Ethan opened his eyes, looked at the dog. Still standing. Still there. Still choosing to stay. Ethan exhaled slowly, then reached for the map again. The paper felt different now. Not just directions, not just markings, weight, consequences. He spread it flat on the table, smoothing the creases with the side of his hand. The firelight flickered across the ink, shadows shifting over the lines Leonard Voss had drawn decades ago. Shadow stayed on his feet, guarding, even with the bandage darkening slowly at his side. Ethan glanced at him. Sit. This time the dog listened, lowering himself carefully. But his eyes never left the door. Ethan looked back at the map. There, near the edge. A name. Not a place, a person. Claire Donovan. Handwritten. Small. Deliberate. Ethan stared at it, then at the letter beside it. But Leonard hadn't just hidden the collection. He'd built a path. One that led out of the forest, out of the storm, into something else entirely. Ethan folded the map once, then again. Slow, precise, decision made. The storm had begun to ease by morning. Not gone, but thinner. The wind no longer screamed. It whispered. Ethan stepped outside just after first light. The world was white, silent. Fresh snow layered over everything, smoothing tracks, erasing signs of what had happened hours before. Except, not all of them. Ethan crouched near the side of the cabin, studied the ground. Boot prints. 2 sets. Heavy. Not locals. Too direct. Too purposeful. They hadn't stumbled on the cabin. They'd come for it. For him. Ethan stood, eyes scanning the tree line. Nothing moved, but that didn't mean anything. He went back inside. Packed light. Essentials only. Water. Med kit. The letter. The map. He hesitated, then reached for the metal box. Opened it. Not for the gold. Not for the art. Just one thing. A small stack of documents. Trust papers. Proof. He slid them into his pack. Closed the box. Locked it again. Shadow stood before Ethan even called him. Ready? Always ready. Ethan checked the bandage once more. Tightened it. Stay close. The dog's tail flicked once. Not wagging. Acknowledging. They stepped out together. Into the cold. The hike out took hours. The snow slowed everything. Each step sank deep, forcing Ethan to adjust his pace, his breathing, his rhythm. But the old instincts were still there. Route selection, energy conservation, awareness. He moved with purpose, not fast, not slow. Efficient. Shadow stayed just ahead, not pulling, not wandering, leading, but checking back, always checking. Once. Ethan stopped, held up a hand. Shadow froze instantly. Ethan listened. Far off. A sound. Engine. Faint. Then gone. He changed direction. Not dramatically. Just enough. Braking pattern. Avoiding predictability. By the time the road appeared through the trees, the sky had shifted. Gray to pale blue. The storm finally releasing its grip. Ethan didn't slow. Didn't relax. Not yet. His truck sat where he'd left it. Half buried. Snow packed around the tires. But intact. He cleared just enough to get in. Started the engine. Let it run. Shadow jumped into the passenger seat. Settled. Watching. Ethan pulled onto the road. Didn't look back. Boise came into view hours later. Civilization. Noise. Movement. Too much of both. Ethan's hands tightened slightly on the wheel. Not fear. Adjustment. He parked 2 blocks from the address. Old habit. Distance. Option. Claire Donovan's office sat above a small law firm. Nothing flashy. No signs of wealth. Just a name on glass. Ethan climbed the stairs. Shadow stayed close. People glanced. Some curious, some cautious. The dog ignored them all. The door opened with a soft chime. A receptionist looked up, paused at the sight of them. "Can I help you?" Ethan reached into his jacket, pulled out the letter, set it gently on the counter. "I need to speak to Claire Donovan." The woman hesitated, then glanced at the name. Something shifted in her expression. "Do you have an appointment?" Ethan didn't answer, just waited. The silence stretched. "Then—" A voice from behind. "Let him in." Claire Donovan stepped into view. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, composed. She looked at Ethan, then at Shadow, then at the letter. "Close the door," she said quietly. The receptionist did. Claire gestured toward her office. "Bring everything." Ethan followed. Inside, the room was simple, organized, controlled. Claire shut the door behind them, turned. "Where did you find it?" Ethan didn't sit, didn't relax. "Idaho backcountry." Claire studied him. Then the dog. Her gaze dropped briefly to the bandage. "Someone else knows." Not a question. Ethan nodded once. "They came last night." Claire exhaled slowly, walked to her desk, pulled out a folder, set it down, opened it. Inside. Documents. Old. Sealed. Marked with the same name. Leonard Voss. "Oh, I've been waiting 27 years for this," she said quietly. Ethan said nothing. Claire looked up, her eyes sharper now, focused. "Do you understand what you're holding?" Ethan's gaze didn't shift. "Enough." She nodded once. "Good." She closed the folder. Firm. "That means you also understand what comes next." Ethan didn't answer. Claire stepped closer, lowered her voice. "They're going to come after you." No hesitation. No softness. "Legally first." She tapped the folder. "Then other ways, if that fails." Her eyes flicked to Shadow. "And they won't come alone." Silence filled the room. Ethan absorbed it. Didn't react. Didn't argue. Claire studied him for another second, then nodded. "Good." She turned back to her desk, picked up a phone, dialed. "Get everything ready," she said. Pause. "Yes." Another pause. "They found it." She hung up, looked back at Ethan. "We don't have much time." Ethan finally moved, set the documents on the desk, one by one, carefully. Claire opened them, read, fast, precise. Her expression didn't change, but something behind it did. Recognition, confirmation. "This is real," she said. Ethan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Claire closed the file, looked at him. "For now, you're protected." A beat. "Legally." Another beat. "But that won't stop them from trying." Ethan nodded once. Shadow shifted slightly, closer to Ethan's leg. Claire noticed, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Good dog." Shadow didn't react. Ethan's hand rested briefly on the dog's head, then dropped. Claire stepped back. "Get some rest." Ethan shook his head. "No." She held his gaze, then nodded. "Then stay ready." A pause. Then the phone rang, sharp, cutting through the room. Claire picked it up, listened. Her expression tightened. "Who?" Silence, then, "I see." She hung up slowly, looked at Ethan. "They've already filed." A beat. "And they're not wasting time." Ethan didn't move, didn't speak. Claire stepped forward. "His name is Daniel Voss." The air shifted. "He's coming for everything." Ethan's eyes stayed steady, unmoved, but something inside had already shifted, locked in. Claire met his gaze. "This doesn't end quietly." Ethan nodded once. He already knew. Shadow stood, stepped forward, positioned himself beside Ethan. Ready, again, always. The courtroom didn't feel like a battlefield. Too quiet, too still. No wind, no shifting ground. No sound of distant engines or something breaking just beyond sight. But Ethan recognized it anyway. The spacing, the angles, the way people watched each other without turning their heads. Different uniforms, same tension. He sat beside Claire Donovan, hands still, eyes forward. Shadow lay at his feet, bandage fresh, scar beginning to show beneath it. The dog didn't move, didn't fidget, but his ears tracked everything, every voice, every step. Across the room, Daniel Voss adjusted his cufflinks. Clean, polished, like he belonged here, like this was already his. His attorneys leaned in, whispering. Papers slid across the table. Precise, controlled. Ethan didn't look at them long, didn't need to. Claire leaned slightly toward him. "Remember," she said quietly, "short answers." "Oh, no extra." Ethan gave a small nod, then went still again. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. The room settled, but not really, not inside, not for anyone who understood pressure. Daniel's lawyer stood first, confident, measured. He spoke about ownership, about legacy, about how something of this scale could not be left to chance, to someone who... He paused, just long enough, then glanced at Ethan, who lacks the stability to manage it. A ripple moved through the room, subtle, but there. Ethan didn't react, didn't shift, didn't blink. The lawyer continued, spoke about military history, about documented trauma, about unpredictability. Each word placed carefully, like steps toward a known outcome. Claire didn't interrupt, didn't object. She waited. Let it land. Then she stood. No rush, no wasted motion. "Your Honor," she said, voice calm, steady. "The trust established by Leonard Voss outlines 3 conditions." She didn't look at Ethan. Didn't need to. "Discovery without prior knowledge. Verified." A document slid forward. "Character? Verified." Another. "And intent." She paused, just long enough, then placed the final document down. "Demonstrated." The judge leaned forward slightly. Claire turned, finally looked at Ethan. "Mr. Cole?" Ethan stood, slow, deliberate. No stiffness, no hesitation, just control. Claire spoke. "Did you know what you were looking for when you entered that forest?" "No." Her voice stayed even. Did you seek out the collection for personal gain? No. Why did you enter the structure? Ethan's eyes shifted once, not to the room, not to the judge, to Shadow, then back. Shelter? Silence followed. Not empty. Full. Claire nodded once. Did you understand the value of what you found? No. A pause. Do you now? Ethan didn't answer immediately. The question stayed in the air. Heavy, then, yes. Claire stepped back slightly. Do you intend to use it for personal wealth? Ethan's jaw tightened just enough to notice. No. The opposing counsel shifted, preparing. Claire didn't give him time. What do you intend to do with it? Ethan didn't look at her, didn't look at anyone. His eyes stayed forward, fixed. Build something that lasts. The words settled. No explanation, no elaboration, just fact. Claire let the silence hold, then sat. Daniel's lawyer stood again. Faster now, less controlled. Mr. Cole, he said, voice sharper. You've experienced combat trauma, correct? Ethan didn't flinch. Yes. You suffer from recurring episodes? Ethan paused. A fraction. Then, yes. The lawyer stepped closer. Would you describe those episodes as unpredictable? Claire rose. Objection. Sustained, the judge said. The lawyer adjusted, shifted angle. Mr. Cole, during these episodes, are you always aware of your surroundings? Ethan's fingers curled once, then relaxed. No. A murmur. Low, but present. The lawyer pressed. And yet, you expect this court to entrust you with assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Ethan didn't answer, didn't rush, didn't defend. He simply stood there. Still. Then, no. The word cut clean, unexpected. The lawyer blinked, thrown. Ethan continued, voice steady. Oh, I don't expect anything. Silence. Total. Even the judge leaned slightly forward. Ethan's gaze didn't move. I found something. A beat. It wasn't meant to be kept. Another who. It was meant to be used. No emotion. No performance. Just truth. Claire watched him. Didn't interrupt. Didn't guide. The room held. Then the judge spoke. Enough. The word carried weight. Finality. She looked between them, then down at the documents, then back up. This court recognizes the validity of the trust. A pause, long enough to feel, and finds that Mr. Cole meets its conditions. The room shifted, audible this time. Daniel Voss stood, anger barely contained. This isn't over, the judge raised a hand. It is here. A gavel struck, sharp, definite, done. Outside, the air felt different, not lighter, just open. Ethan stood at the base of the courthouse steps. Didn't move right away. Didn't speak. Shadow stood beside him. Closer now. Bandage visible. Scar forming. People moved around them, voices, questions, cameras. Ethan ignored all of it. Claire stepped beside him. It's going to change things, she said quietly. Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were somewhere else. Not here. Not now. Claire followed his gaze, then nodded once. You already know what comes next. Ethan finally moved, just slightly. A shift of weight. Decision. Months passed. The land came first. Far enough from the city. Close enough to reach. Open. Quiet. Space to build. Ethan worked alongside the crews. Not above. Not directing from distance. Hands-on. Present. Measuring. Checking. Watching. The way he always had. A shadow stayed with him. Every day. Every step. The scar slowed him at first. then less, then not at all. The first building went up before winter. Simple, functional, clean lines, no wasted space. Inside, rooms, not for storage, not for profit, for people, veterans, men and women who didn't sleep, who heard things that weren't there, who saw things when they closed their eyes. Ethan didn't explain it, didn't advertise. Word spread anyway. It always does. The first one arrived in silence, didn't say much, didn't ask, just stood there. Ethan nodded once. That was enough. Shadow approached, slow, careful, sat in front of him, waited. The man hesitated, then reached out, hand shaking, touched the dog's head. Something shifted, small but real. More came. Not all at once, one at a time. Then more. The rooms filled, then expanded. More buildings, more space. No rush, no excess. Just steady. Like everything else Ethan did. One evening, months later, Ethan stood outside, watching. A group sat near the fire pit, talking. Not loud, not forced, just talking. Shadow moved between them, calm, steady, present. One of the men laughed, short, unexpected, but real. Ethan didn't react, didn't smile, didn't move closer. He just watched, like he used to, from a distance, making sure everything held. Behind him, the main building stood, lights warm inside. No noise, no chaos, just space. The kind that didn't demand anything, didn't push, didn't break. Ethan looked out across it all, then down at Shadow. The dog looked back, tail still, eyes steady. Ethan gave a small nod. Nothing more, nothing. Now the wind moved through the trees, soft, not a storm, not anymore. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't brace for it. He just stood there and let it pass. And maybe that's the part most people don't see. Not the money, not the fight, not the headlines. But the moment a man who thought he was broken finally stood still and didn't have to run anymore. So here's something simple. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, just drop a 1 in the comments. No long message, no explanation, just a 1. It lets me know you were here and that this story meant something to you. And if you believe stories like this still matter, stories about second chances, loyalty, and finding your way back, hit subscribe, because the next story might stay with you even longer. I'll see you there.